when you open up these scenes in 3ds Max to work on this project, there's a few things that you might want to rearrange just to make it better for you. And one of those things is you're going to want to make sure that you've got your project set up. And we talked about this a little bit last week. So when you go down to File and then Project, make sure you don't use Automatic Switch. I want to make sure everybody sees what I'm talking about here, so I'm going to actually take over the lab as well. Might seem a little bit obtrusive to people who are rolling, but I gave everybody a heads up and asked them to, please save their work just to make sure. This also kind of locks people out from being able to log in, but it's just the way it's got to be right now. I'm going to demo full screen in the lab to all the computers that are out there. So now that you're seeing this, give it to you high quality. So you're seeing what I'm seeing on this screen here. So if I click on the word File and I go down here under Project, make sure you deselect Automatic Switch. That's in the video I sent out. And also make sure if you look under Configure Project Paths that you see a couple of things. One of them is that it points to your H drive. So when you bring that up, you're going to want to look here and see that it says H as in home. Right there. That's your drive letter. Okay. Now, if you don't have the external files set up, which is on this next tab here, the video is going to show you how to set them up so it looks in a different place. Above and beyond that, though, that was just kind of a review of the other video. And by the way, this message is normal. I want to make sure you position yourself for success by bringing up something under the Tools area. So right above my head over here, it says Tools. We're going to bring up the Scene Explorer. By default, that's not in this particular view. The Scene Explorer right now is what we call floating. It can be moved around. What I'm going to do is I want to park it on one side. So if you right click here, you'll see an option to dock, like a boat. So we're going to dock it on, in this case, I'm going to dock it on the left side. Now I can see the names of everything here. And so instead of wondering about like, which Jeep is this, or what roof is that, and I can click on them and see them by name. And this is a great example being modeled for you where everything has been named. So as you create your objects, as indicated here, make sure you name things. All right. Lights, I wish they would have named a little bit better, but they didn't. So getting to selection sets. If we look at the top here where it says create selection sets, there is a list of selection sets if we're not already isolated. So let's make sure that my selection has not been isolated. Isolation is something that's done in here. You see Alt-Q to isolate something. I'm looking at one particular object. If I click on Isolate again under Tools, I can end the isolation. So that's what we're doing. The selections can be made manually or by name, and you should see names here like barracks. First part of this that you're going to be working on is this area of the compound. I'm going to maximize one viewport here. Switch it over to default shading. And actually, I probably should have grabbed the same version because this is a finished version. All right, so over in this part of the world here, you're going to be working on these objects, and there's a selection set in your version to grab these containers. You're going to be putting materials on them, so you're going to be using select by name, and then you're going to be isolating your selection, and then you're going to be working in this area. Another question that came up was, Mr. Judge, when I touch M on my keyboard, I don't see the standard material type. So if you're in 3ds Max and you bring up your material editor by touching M, or if you want to see the other way to do it, it's this box here that looks like it's got these checkerboard boxes. The material editor is going to be based on a number of things. It relates to your render engine as well. So we've worked on physical material, but there's another one called standard. So a standard material, it's considered legacy. If it doesn't show up, then there's an option to show incompatible options here. So let's see, is it a right click here on showing options? There is an option here to show ones that are not compatible. Well, all right, I'm not going to worry about it right now. So I've got a standard and I've got a physical, and I've got them side by side here. You'll notice the words are slightly different, and this is normal within technology, that as time goes on, they might change the word a little bit. They actually changed the name of the cinematics in Unreal Engine. It used to be called one thing, and they changed it to another. I don't want to confuse you even more. All right, so a lot more options on physical than there are on standard. And we came from the world where standard was the way it was done, and physically based is going to be the way that we're heading towards. That plus OSL, which we'll talk about later in the week again, following up on Wednesday's activity. So make sure you got your your materials here. If you want to see what's in use, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. This is the last scene. And below the sample slots here, it says scene materials. There's a variety of materials that are being used. One of them is the barn material, as well as the barracks, as well as the metal roof, the barrier. All of these have been built within 3ds Max. And here's the Jeep material, for example. If I bring out the Jeep, it's a physical material. Instance means if I change one, it changes all of them. So I'm going to grab an instance. And if I look at how this Jeep material is put together in the base color map, if I trace this line back, I can see it's bringing in a bitmap. Now we're going to start to peel back a little bit about the mystery of how does this stuff work, that we can see how a flat file can be mapped onto a 3D object. This particular bitmap is used for all the surfaces on the Jeep, including all 4 tires, including the wheel hubs, including both doors, the hood, and the deck. This is instead of saying X and Y, we call it a UV map, and we map those pixels to the 3D coordinates. And so we're starting to get into the details of how we UV texture something. This first one's done for you, but we're going to be playing with that tomorrow. We're going to actually do that onto an airplane. So once this is set up, we can actually, it's already been pre-built for you, we can actually assign this material to a Jeep. In fact, the Jeep in here has been set up for you. The thing I wanted to jump in here and show you was the isolation as well as the selection sets. There's a Jeep right there, making sure I'm on move and select. I've got the material in my material browser. I can either drag from here to it, or if I've got it selected in the scene, I think I just touched A to assign it. And it doesn't show up here because there's an option above me here that says show it in the viewport, and it's not been turned on. So make sure it's on in the preview and make sure it's on in the viewport, both of these buttons here. I also need to make sure I'm actually on the Jeep material here. There's the Jeep material. Got it in both places, and I'm going to assign this to the Jeep. Pardon the awkwardness. To the Jeep. Now the Jeep, if I render it out, let's get it zoomed in a little bit more on it with the Shift Q, should show up with, missing some map files. I'm just going to do a continue here. Should show up with the Jeep showing some materials on it. Which camera am I on? Quad 4, orthographic. There it is. Oh, yeah, I got to work on my render here. My render is not set up proper. All right, I'm going to stop this demo for a minute because I want to show you the selection set. I'll work out the bugs on my particular render, which has to do with the render engine I'm using here. Probably have to get into my environment settings and my render settings, but I don't want to hold you guys up. I'm going to give you back your computers, use chat, public or private, and I'll jump in and help you. All right, check for questions. Thank you, students.